So it's been just about 3 months since I got this 2024 Ioniq 6 SE rear-wheel drive, and I completely missed the 1 month as well as the 2-month review period. So here we are 3 months later, we'll call it a quarter. And I'm going to talk to you guys today about everything that I like about it, everything I dislike about it so far, and in general, just my thoughts around the car. So if you guys are interested, then stay tuned. Hey everybody, it's the Ioniq Guy. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name's Corbin. I cover all things Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, EV related. This is a 2024 Ioniq 6 SE rear-wheel drive, the cheapest long-range version of the Ioniq 6 available in the United States. And the main reason I wanted to do this is to show you guys what living with a base model Ioniq is like. So this car does not have any of the major bells and whistles that you can get on it, but it is still a very well-equipped vehicle. I'm missing a few things, but there's a lot of things that I just really don't miss. And we'll talk about those later in the video. At the time, this was also the cheapest lease in the United States. So the advertised price was $230, I believe, per month after taxes, title, all the other fees. I'm paying a little over $300 per month for this car. So even after all that, it's still a very good value and still an excellent car for the price. The ultimate red color here has really grown on me. Even though I've never been a red car guy, I really like it. I like the really simple wheels. These are the 18s, so they give this car big range, big efficiency numbers. My fiance has been driving the car a lot, primarily as her daily driver. She even likes it more than her Kona EV that we returned last month. I'm finding it really difficult though to put miles on both the cars. So this car is a cream puff. After 3 months, it only has 1,300 miles on it. So likely we're not going to do more than 5,000 or 6,000 miles per year with it, which is unfortunate because our lease is for 12,000. We're not even going to come close to touching that. I wish we could have gotten an even better price for putting this low of miles on it. So starting with the exterior of the Ioniq 6. Having owned it for 3 months now, I have really come to love the design of the Ioniq 6. I think it is a very unique looking car. It's not looking like every other Tesla on the road. It sticks out, it's striking, it's different, and I really appreciate that about the Ioniq 6. I love the fact that the base model comes with all the same lighting as the upper trims of the car, so you get that same look as if you got the Ioniq 6 Limited. We've got a couple of dings on the car. We had a chip here from opening the back door, and then on the other side of the car, there is a scratch right here in the middle of the door panel. I did that, I think, the first day I had it. So that kind of bugs me, but I think if I use a touch-up pen, it's gonna make it even more obvious and stick out more. So I'm just gonna leave it for now. Something I really like about the Ioniq 6 is how quick the trunk opens. From the time I press the button, it's already opening, and then within a couple seconds, you're in. Now, it's not a big trunk. We don't put a whole lot in here very often, but for running and going to get a few bags of groceries, this net here is the perfect spot to just stash that stuff real quick. I've gotten all the windows tinted all the way around, minus the windshield. This thing was like a fishbowl when I got it, and I hate not having window tint on my cars. I just really like the heat reduction from it, as well as getting a little bit more privacy. Of course, the Ioniq 6 has a front trunk, but you can see I don't really keep anything in here other than the first aid kit that came with the car. We don't really use it for much, so we're not going in here all that often. I know there has been an issue with Ioniq 6 where the cabin air filter, which is located behind this plastic panel, is allowing water to enter it, and it's causing mold issues. I've checked my cabin air filter on multiple occasions now. I'm not seeing any signs of moisture, so I don't know if they fixed that issue by the time my car was made, but that has not been an issue with my Ioniq 6. I've also had no issues with my 12-volt battery. You also get front parking sensors in the SE trim, which is also a nice touch. They've come in handy because this car is a little bit longer than the Ioniq 5, so when I'm pulling it in and out of my garage, it does make that a little bit easier. Now, in terms of charging the Ioniq 6, it's been all AC charging since I got the car at 11 kilowatts. I've had no issues with overheating charge ports or charger derating. It charges from 0 to 100% at 11 kilowatts the entire session, which is why for now, I'm not going to be bringing it in for the new technical service bulletin that addresses level 2 charging, because it is level 2 charging just fine. If that issue does start to present itself where it is overheating while charging, I will bring it in and get that update, but for now, it's been completely perfect for 1,300 miles. And like I said, I have not DC fast charged this car at all. It was plugged in at the dealership when I did pick it up, but that's about it. Now, something that the Ioniq 6 has that the Ioniq 5 doesn't is this button right here. And if you have a charging schedule to get time of use rates with your electrical provider, you can hold down this button. It will cancel your schedule for that charging session. And then the next time you go to plug in, the schedule will be reactivated again. So that's kind of a nice function to have right there for people who do that. There's also an LED light in here, which I do really like. All right, so we're inside my 2024 Ioniq 6 SE rear-wheel drive. The first thing I want to touch base on is the key fob. Now, when I first got the car, this was something that I really didn't like. It's very light, but after owning the car for 3 months now, the key fob has actually grown on me. You can see it is the Hyundai logo with the way the buttons are laid out. And they're big, they're easy to press, they're easy to feel for once you know what you're feeling for if you have it in your pocket. Here on the SE, on the side, all you really have is the trunk opening button. This doesn't have the parking assist, so you don't have those extra 2 buttons on the side. So if you just want to pop open the trunk, even if it's in your pocket, you can just hold down that button. It's easy to find. And the lightness, honestly, I think might be a good thing, actually. It doesn't feel like a big, heavy brick when it's just sitting in your pocket. But I will say I am not a fan of the fact that they weren't able to fit the emergency key inside the fob itself like in past key fobs. Instead, it's just dangling with the fob, and it's just another thing that you could potentially lose in the future. All right, so let's talk about the rest of the interior. I find these fabric seats to be very comfortable. They're just the right width for me, and the fabric is actually pretty nice. You know, one thing that I do miss about fabric seats is the fact that they stay relatively cool compared to the fake leather seats like in most other cars these days. Part of me really wishes that high quality, nice fabric seats could be considered luxurious again instead of every luxury car having to be all leather. There is something to be said about a fabric seat. Something that I do notice in the Ioniq 6 here, the way the dashboard reflects on the windshield is pretty significant. Like most of the time I'm driving, I notice the grill here for whatever's underneath that, and it is a little bit distracting. And then even up top, you can see that. That is this silver trim around the bezel. It's just really obvious in the windshield, depending on the time of day, depending on the lighting, but it can be a little bit distracting, and I don't really like that. I do really like the fact here that you have the blacked out headliner and pillars in the car. It is a lot of black in this interior, but I think it looks better than had they gone with a lighter color up top. I think that probably would have looked a little strange. The interior here is dead silent. Over the last 3 months, I haven't noticed a single creak, a single noise being generated by any of the doors in here coming from the trunk. Really nothing at all. This car seems extremely well put together. Other than the steering wheel buttons and the HVAC controls, there is no high gloss black touch points in here that are going to be covered in fingerprints. This right here is a kind of satin, almost eggshell black plastic, and it really doesn't show fingerprints at all. It looks good most of the time. It doesn't really show much dust. So I do think that material choices in here were executed very well. I love this like ribbed pattern under this plastic piece here that runs along the dashboard. And I also really like the pixels that continue across the dashboard in this piece here. Something else I really like is the charge port door button located here on the instrument panel. Something that the Ioniq 5 lacks, and I really wish it did have. I'm also not really loving the placement of the mirror controls, mostly because this is the SE trim and it doesn't have memory seats. Now that my fiance is living back home again, she is driving this car a lot. This is basically her main car. I drive the Ioniq 5 more at this point. Every time I go to get in the car, I got to spend at least a minute adjusting all the settings, the mirrors, the seat, the rear view mirror. To be perfectly honest, had I really put more thought into it, I probably would have ended up getting a limited trim just for that reason alone. You can see over the last 1,146 miles that I have been driving the car, we are averaging 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour. We're sitting at 79% state of charge, and my guessometer is saying 297 miles. If you extrapolate that to 100%, then it's close to 400 miles of range. And this thing has just been so efficient. That's one of my favorite things about driving this car, is the efficiency. If you're just tooling around town at 30, 40 miles per hour, this thing just sips electrons, and I love that. So I did do a couple highway range tests with this. One, when it was cooler out, it was 60 degrees. I averaged 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour at 69 miles per hour. And just the other day, I decided to do it again at 84 degrees Fahrenheit because I thought that I would be able to beat that, and I was able to, and at a higher speed, average speed of 72 miles per hour. I averaged 4.0 miles per kilowatt hour. This thing is just a road tripping monster. And that was done with the air conditioning on, auto level 1 at 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It was in eco mode, but eco mode doesn't really matter here in a rear wheel drive car because it doesn't have a front motor to disconnect. And I put it in highway drive assist, so throttle mapping doesn't really matter because I'm not modulating the accelerator pedal myself. But just so you can see, here's some of our recent trips in the car. You can see 5.1 miles per kilowatt hour on a 31-mile trip, 5 on a 16. This 4-mile trip had 9.5, 109 on this 2-mile trip. You can see just what kind of efficiency we are getting in this thing. It is just fantastic. The worst one here looks to be about 2.2. I don't know where we were going, but it was mostly probably uphill. In terms of how I drive this car, I basically almost always leave it in eco mode now. I find this car accelerates perfectly adequately for what it is. It's not a sports car. It's not trying to be a sports car. The all-wheel drive would be significantly faster, but for everyday driving, this car is plenty. It dulls the throttle and encourages me to drive in a more efficient manner. I've also been spending a lot of time driving this car in level 0 regen, coasting as much as possible because that is the most efficient way to drive. And around here in New England, where it's awfully hilly, you can get to a lot of places almost entirely by coasting. I live up on a hill. I can almost coast for probably 4 miles to the grocery store and get there without using almost any energy. So that is pretty cool. Now, when you are driving this car in iPedal, I find that it is really slow to bring the car to a stop, even worse than my Ioniq 5 after all the software updates it's gotten over the last few years. You really have to take your foot off the accelerator pedal a few hundred feet before you're going to hit, say, a stop sign or something. Otherwise, you're going to be moving back and forth between the accelerator pedal and the brake pedal. Putting the car into sport mode seems to make it a little bit better about stopping a little bit more aggressively, but it's still not up to the level that I personally prefer. So if you haven't already seen, I did put out a video where I drove this Ioniq 6 past 0 to see how many miles I could do. If you're interested in finding out what that number was, you can click that button right up there and it'll take you right to that video. But after I did that, I wanted to see how much battery capacity this new Ioniq 6 has. So what I did is I plugged it in and charged it to 100% state of charge, and it took in 74.416 kilowatt hours of energy. So 2 years from now, when I go to turn this car in, we will run that test again and see what battery capacity looks like at that point in time. Now, granted, I'm only going to have a little over probably 10,000 miles on this thing, so odds are it's probably not going to have hardly any battery degradation. I wouldn't expect it to with that little bit of mileage. Battery degradation is usually more affected by mileage and how many charge cycles versus time. But regardless, we will do that test at that time. Something else I'm really bummed about that would have pushed me to stepping up to at least the SEL trim is the fact that I can't use my Comma 3X in this Ioniq 6. The Comma development team has not gotten Highway Drive Assist 1.5 working yet with the Comma 3X. So all those automated driving features that I love using with the Comma 3X, none of them work in here. I can't even get a wiring harness for the Comma 3X to utilize with my car. So had I looked into it more and known that it would have worked on the SEL trim, that alone would have pushed me to get the SEL, because now that I drive my car almost always in an automated state with the Comma 3X, it's really hard to come to this car and drive fully manually. So because we use bigger cup holders, I've got my cup holder enlarger in here. I've got my sunglass holders as well, since there is no overhead sunglass storage bin. These are my fiance's sunglasses, and they are just easily stored right there. They're within arm's reach. You always got them accessible. I really like this big cutout in the door panel here, and that's because there's no window switches here. The window switches are located in the center console. And that allows me to kind of push my knee out a little bit without impacting this, and that's really comfortable for me as a taller driver. The sound system in here is okay. It's not great. It's not going to blow your socks off, but it's a decent sound system. For a $300 per month car, I'm really not going to complain and get too upset over it. Here in the back seat of the Ioniq 6, not a whole lot to say. We have only transported people back here maybe twice, maybe 3 times now. They've had a perfectly adequate experience back here. They said they've been comfortable. They were pretty short trips, but no rattles coming from the seat belt like in the Ioniq 5, so that is a really nice thing to see. And like I've already touched on before back here, legroom is fantastic. You can see with the seat adjusted for me at 6'2", I've got at least 4 or 5 inches of space between my knees and the back of the seat, so it is a decently big back seat. Whenever I'm driving my Ioniq 5, I'm almost always reminded how much I miss having interior ambient lighting, because here on the SE trim, there is none whatsoever. It is a completely pitch black interior at night, and I do really miss that. So what I did here is down in the center console, I installed a 12 volt to USB adapter and then a USB LED light, and mixing that with the translucent rails there in that cubby area, it does spread a little bit of light amongst the front footwells, which is pretty nice, but it definitely doesn't compare to having customizable colors for the upper door panels, the lower door panels, the dashboard, like in the higher trims of the Ioniq 6. But again, that is life with a base model. You're not going to get all the things that you want. Something else I really miss is having a auto-dimming rear view mirror, and then having the home link buttons on there for the garage door. You can see I have to have my garage door opener up on the visor. I do really miss that. Another thing I absolutely love about being in this car is how quiet it is in here. This thing is even quieter than my Ioniq 5. And then you have double glazed glass on the windshield, the front window. You can see it right there. And even the rear window has double glazing as well. So all the front windows are really well insulated from sound. I think the tires they selected for this car also really contribute, as well as the fact that it just has a really low drag coefficient, meaning it is not stirring up as much air as it's passing through. So all of those things coming together really help provide a nice, calm, and tranquil interior. The air conditioning in this car works fabulously, works really quick, cools down the cabin really fast. And I love the fact that you have the 3-level auto climate control. So if you want to cool it down quicker, you leave it on 3. If you're already feeling pretty comfortable, you turn it to auto level 1, and it maintains the cabin temperature relatively easily. So that's going to do it for this 3-month update on my Ioniq 6. Really liking the car. I do have those few quibbles with it, but for the most part, for the price, it is an excellent vehicle. If you guys liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Check out my store at ioniqguy.com for accessories for your Ioniq 6 if you are interested, including my walk-away door lock that if you shut the doors on the car, you hold the key fob and walk away, within 10 seconds, all those door handles will shut and the car will lock itself. So you can see right there, works perfectly every time. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.